We specialize we specialize in childcare insurance. I've been doing this for almost 20 years, being an agent. So I've seen a lot of things happen to childcare providers, and a lot of ways that we can help, and a lot of ways that you can prepare yourself in the event that something happens in your daycare. So this is my personal information here. We will share it at the very end as well in the event that you have any further or more personal questions that you want to ask me, or if you have specific questions about any kind of insurance that you may need. So with that being, and what I like to do is, as I'm going through the presentation, I like to talk about real cases that we had defended for childcare providers. Also, stuff that happened with licensing and how to hopefully prevent those things for you not to get in trouble with licensing. So questions, we're going to take questions as we're talking, because if not later on, providers may forget what they were going to ask. So either we were talking with Maribel, either two things. You can you can request to be unmute yourself, raise your hand, or you can type it into the chat room so we can go ahead and answer whatever questions you may have. All right, so I already talked a little bit about who Child King is, and we're going to go right into it. First thing that we'd like to talk about is working with parents and licensing. Well, licensing, as you may already know, if some of you are new or some are already know, been in the business for a while, licensing is the authority that watches over childcare providers. A lot of providers, when they talk about licensing, they get a little scared because they do have a lot of power, and but nothing to be scared of, because I'm sure all of you have probably gone through a lot of training to be able to get a license to have your own business. So here in California, licensing means the regulatory agency that runs child care providers. It's very important that you know the regulations of your state. Here in California, it's called Title 22. It is a big book, so I mean you can read it even though you don't have to necessarily know everything, but at least know the basics of stuff. That we'll hopefully go through some of those things here in the presentation. We'll talk about complaints, how anyone can file a complaint with licensing, just because the simple fact that you have a license from California, so anyone has access to your, not necessarily to your personal stuff, but your licensing information. And a lot of those times, when there's a complaint to licensing, a lawsuit may follow right after that. But we'll talk more about this. All right. So the first thing that when you guys open a daycare, or if you're already in business, the first thing that you need to do is file the contract. And finally, having a contract with the parents is very important. More important, probably, that you can think about. We recommend that your prospective parents should sign and understand what they're signing. And some of the stuff that are here, and I'm sure some of you probably have other conditions as well, but some of the stuff that is here, things that you can always change, are raise the services you provide, because it doesn't necessarily mean because you're a childcare provider, that's all you're going to be doing. No, you guys have many hats, you do different jobs. On-time pickup, that's another thing that is very important, because if some of you already been in business for a while, that's a big problem. Late fees, scheduled days you will be closed. Remember, you're just like a regular business. As we all take days off on holidays, vacations, you are allowed to do that as well. Have a termination condition on your contract so you can protect yourself in the event that you need to. And policy on sick children. This policy on sick children, in the past, it was very different to what it is now. Now, anything that has high fever, coughing, we automatically relate it to COVID. So I'm sure you guys know what to do if that happens. Be consistent when enforcing the contract. If it's not the first time a child in childcare asks why they left the other facility. So with that being said, for the first part of the presentation, and when he says only accept a child when, and this is, I'm going to read a little bit of what it says there. I'm going to give you the first real sample of why this is so important. So make sure that all paperwork is complete. Try to not use tomorrow. Try to use now. Parents may ask you to take a child without completed paperwork, and you see how it is in dark letters in there. Do not do it. If you bend the rules, you will be in trouble with licensing and could be endangering the child. Do not do any favor for parents that that could endanger the child and cost you your license. So this is the first case that we defended a few years ago on why the contract is so important. On a Sunday afternoon, the child care provider receives a phone call from one of their clients saying that a friend of hers needs daycare and she has a spot for the kid. I said, yes, we do. Bring him in tomorrow. The kid comes in the next day. The child care provider is not at the home. She's at the school dropping off some kids, and it's time to feed him breakfast. They get fed. They give him peanut butter. The kid is allergic to peanut butter. Nobody knows about this because there's no contract yet. And then the kid has a really bad reaction. First thing, the paramedics come, take the kid to the hospital. Then because they think it's they take that as a criminal case because there's a little kid that life could be in danger. The cops get called. Cops reported to licensing. So it becomes a big issue. The very long end, that same client that the child care provider was trying to do a favor for filed a lawsuit against the provider because she fed the kid something that she was not supposed to, even though there was no contract. So it was a big mess. Luckily, she had insurance. The insurance company paid for the claim, and also we were able to save her license. So that's why we say it's very important to only accept the child when all the paperwork is complete. So make sure that you always do that. And we understand that this is a business, and you try to get as many kids as possible. But if something happens very similar to where you need to either run an errand, go to school to drop off some kids, make sure that the assistant that you're leaving behind understands there'll be a new kid coming, or perhaps you can make time or let the new parent know to come before you leave, so you can go ahead and take care of the contract before anything else. Um, Sign in, sign out. This is something that has changed a little bit as well. A lot of childcare providers nowadays use digital sign-ins and sign out. Back in the days, and I'm still sure a lot of providers do this, they still do it the old school with a paper and pencil, paper and pencil. Now in days, like I say, digital stuff works as well. So keep track of of the drop-off time, pickup times, and verifies the days that the child was in care. It could help you in in a few different ways, but I'm just going to mention a couple of them. One, if you're getting paid through a childcare resource referral agency, that will be your time sheet that you're going to submit. Second, if something happens with that kid, you're going to be able to have proof that that kid was in care or was not in care. And third one, when you see the kid at the very beginning, and you notice something is different to when the kid left the day before or the weekend before, especially weekends, make sure that you document whatever you see different on the kid. And document is something that we recommend very much, which means anything that happens in your daycare, make sure that you always documenting what's going on. That's going to help you in the event something comes out in the future. If you notice something after the parents had left, call them to get details and ask them what happened. When they come pick up the child, make sure that you haven't signed the report that you're doing or put their initials on it. I want to say 90% of the time, the parents are always going to be in a hurry and they do not want to sign or initial anything. That is absolutely fine as long as you have it in writing and documented in the kid's file. So, you can always do that. Um, no one should be allowed to pick up a child prior to authorization on the child's file, not even a family member or a close friend. And this is something that when we used to do these presentations in person, we always had a little extra time for this kind of stuff because a lot of child care providers had different cases that happened to them. And, we love hearing from other people how they be able to resolve those cases. Once again, technology helps a lot. And a lot of times what they do is, and this is ideas that I get from providers, is that they get a text from the parent saying, oh, my grandma, my mom, whomever is going to come pick up the child. This is a picture of their driver's license. This is a picture of them. This is a description of how they look like. A bunch of other stuff, right? But at the very long run, if this person is not in the list of people who can pick up or drop off a child, you can you can get in trouble. So it's your very option if you want to allow that kid to live with somebody who's not on the list, even though you have all the information. Or, a lot of providers, they say that they just wait whatever time the parent's going to be late. If it's going to be half an hour, just do that just in the event, you will be protecting yourself. Because remember, if they're not on the list, and if you release the kid to someone that is not on the list, you could be in trouble for that. Another case is when parents are involved in a custody dispute or if they're going through a divorce. And if you, unfortunately, you can get dragged into it. So if there's paperwork work from the court, make sure that you have it and you know what day the kid has to go with the mom and what day has to go with the dad. So before we move to another section, I don't know if there's any questions that you guys may have about these two things that we just talked about. And now we just move along. You can type them or you can unmute yourself and you can ask me any questions. Or if not, you can ask them at the very end. So I guess we don't have anything, so we just keep on going. Unannounced LPA visits. LPA is licensing. So there could be two reasons why licensing shows up to your house. The first one, it would be your yearly visit, which is absolutely fine. The second one is in the event they show up 5, 6, 3, 4 months later after they come to your house. If they do that, most probably they're going to be showing up because there's a complaint. Somebody put a complaint against you. And don't get scared. If that's the case. You know, a lot of times you're probably not going to know that somebody put a complaint against you. You're just going to know when licensing comes and they let you know. And they a lot of times they don't even know. They don't even tell you what the complaint's coming from. They just call it personal rights a lot of times. And until when they finish the investigation is when they tell you what happened. They may never tell you who it was. So if they show up at the door, it's probably because someone filed a complaint. If they ask you to do something during the visit to which is against regulations, such as going into a separate room which to talk, which leave the children unsupervised and on an incorrect provided to child ratio. And this is something that happens, and it happens very often, even if you only have one child. And that one child, when licensing comes, they ask you to come talk to them in the kitchen, and you leave the child alone for 5 minutes. Right after you come back to the living room, they're going to tell you, now I'm going to have to give you a violation because you left the kid by yourself. That's negligence. So that's a type A violation. So we'll talk a little bit about violation type on a little bit down the road. But you do have the right to tell them that you don't have anyone to help you at that moment. And if you can please set up an appointment so you can arrange for someone to be there to take care of the kids. You do have that right. And they're probably going to respect you even more if they know what you're doing because that's against regulations. So if that's the case, make sure that you ask that. And like I say, these are real cases that have happened in the past. And that's why we mention them here so it doesn't happen to you. We move on to the next one. We keep going with, unannounced visits. Be sure when they leave that they give you a written summary of the visit. They got to give you whatever happened in the daycare. If you did not, if everything is under control, they'll let you know. If you have any violations, they're going to write them. There's two types of violations. Type B, which are minor violations, such as they can fine soap, bleach, anything where the kids can reach it. That's a type B violation. And then there's the type A violation that nowadays it carries a civil fine. Civil means money. They're going to give you a money fine depending on what it is. Most of the times, the two fines that carry a civil violation is overcapacity and fingerprinting. So make sure that we'll talk a little bit more about those, but those are the type A violations that will give you a fine for. Attorneys representing providers in hearings recommend that you do not sign anything in blank because of the fact that what if the LPA forgot to write something on that report, and you're going to have a different report of what they reported over to their supervisor or what they may report on their website. And remember, anything on your record is something that, for example, insurance companies, that's one of the resources that we use to make sure that we're going to insure someone that deserves to have insurance. So, we do check your record. And if your record is clean, definitely the insurance company takes you. If you have a violations type A, they may not take you. So make sure you watch out for those type A violations. Type B violations, if you have too many of them, they may also reject you because of that. If you're cited without any specific violations being identified, you can write on that report, I don't know what that violation is, and then sign it. And like I say, at the very beginning, if you get a complaint against you, they're not going to tell you off the bat what the complaint is all about. They're just going to call it personal rights. And from that personal rights, it can go into many other ways besides personal rights. So if you don't know, you can always write it. Be sure that you understand your appeal rights. including the time limits to file. The attorneys that represent childcare providers, they highly recommend that even if you know that what was done was wrong, you always appeal it. Because by appealing it, you're trying to keep your record clean. And if it's a type A violation and they can lower it to a type B violation, that's even better. So once again, this is a question that we always come about, even though in California, all licensing should be in uniform, meaning that the dates should be all the same. Yet, when we ask these questions and ask them how many days do you have to appeal a violation, some of them come out with 5 days, 3 days, 4 days. It varies a bunch of other questions, but as far as I'm concerned, you have 15 business days to appeal the case. And like I say, make sure that you do it not on the last day, but perhaps at the very beginning. And if you need help with an appeal, make sure that you can consult with your resource and referral agency, your child care association. A lot of times, in my case, I have the attorney is a really good friend of mine, and we can always help you with that appeal, even if you're not a client of the insurance. Most common violations, and this is it could change because it changes every so often. So remember, you got to do the fire drills every 6 months. That's what licensing requires. Even though a lot of resource and referral agencies, they require you to do it every month. Make sure that the roster is up to date. Make sure that your CPR certification is up to date for you and anybody who may need it at the daycare. Fingerprint clearance, that's very important. Make sure that you have them all really up to date, and don't go without him being fingerprinted. If you have a doubt on who should be fingerprinted, make sure that you call your LPA and understand that condition. Immunizations for providers and employees, carbon monoxide detector. This is something that it went into effect a few years ago, and if you're a brand new provider, you probably something that you have to do from the very beginning. Make sure that you always have a working fire extinguisher, and it is up to date. You got to keep updating that fire extinguisher every year. And overcapacity. Overcapacity, like I say, and fingerprint clearance are the only two violations on this that carry a civil penalty, which is money. Off-limit areas. Because of the fact that all of you have your business in your home, licensing requires you to give them an off-limits area. So I'm sure if you're already licensed, licensing asks you for a map of your home, and then you tell them, this is what I'm going to be using for my daycare services. The living room, the extra room, a den, whatever it is that you use, make sure that those places are the only ones that you use for daycare. If you have anything that is such as your own personal bedroom or another room that you don't want to use for daycare, make sure that those things are always locked, or not necessarily locked, but keep them closed so the kids don't go into those rooms. If you have a kid that is crying, you think by bringing them into that room is going to resolve the problem. It may, but what if, and this is always happens, what if licensing shows up on that day? Or you get so used to bringing that kid over to a place where he's not allowed to have daycare that you completely forget about it. And licensing is going to show up and they're going to say, this place is, is off limits. Why is this kid here? So make sure that you respect those things that you already chose for the places that need to be for daycare. If you have a two-story home, you can use collapsible fences to block the staircases in case you don't use the second floor. Place outside gate latches near the top of the gate to make it harder for children to reach. And this is something that it happens very often, not often, but very often, when little kids walk away from the daycare. When little kids walk away from the daycare, that's a very, very serious violation. And a lot of times it could trigger for licensing to start a process of revoking your license. So make sure nowadays, I know a lot of childcare providers, they use cameras, they use a lot of technology to help them protect them from anything of that effect to happen. So if you do use cameras, great. If not, little things that still from the old school still work. So you can use the tingling bells, you can use whatever is necessary to make sure no kid goes out of your daycare without your supervision. Regulations require all hazardous items to be inaccessible to children, including guns, which have their own set of special rules. So one thing that we can tell providers is just to keep your daycare the same way that you keep it when you got licensed. So to get a habit of doing everything the same way, thinking the license is going to show that day. So when licensing eventually shows up, you're not going to be afraid that you have all this stuff that you're not supposed to have, or that there's paperwork that is missing on any files, or there's all the things that you may think that it's okay, but they're not. So make sure that just think about license is going to shop today and use that as a motivation every day to keep your daycare up to date. Staff ratios and overcapacity. Just because of the fact that you have a license for 8 children or 14 children, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can have those kids at one time. So make sure that you understand when you can have the 8 kids, when you can have more infants, when you're allowed to have this and that. So make sure, I'm sure licensing will give you uh, a paperwork where it shows pictures how many kids, how many infants you are allowed to have. So especially for new childcare providers, just because of the fact they get a license for 8 children, they think they can have 8 children all at the same time without any age restriction. Well, that's not the case. Make sure that you understand it. If you operate multiple sections, which is really good if you're doing that, great for business. Early arrivals or late pickups can expose you to be cited for overcapacity. Have a plan of action if this occurred. So, we run into a lot of clients that they tell us that they have 6 children that come from 8 to 12 and 8 children that come from 1 to 5. So there's some time in between that you can leave the space in the event a parent is late picking up a child, or if there's a special thing that you're going to keep a couple of kids a little bit extra time. So that is absolutely fine, as long as when the other 6 kids arrive, that you don't have any more kids that are going to put you over capacity. Licensing is very strict on overcapacity. They don't care if traffic is bad. They really don't. And providers have been cited and fined. And some licensing agencies here in California, they consider serious enough to start revoking a license. If you have more than 2 violations for overcapacity or fingerprinting, they may start looking into revoking your license. So watch out for those 2 special violations. And that's why we like to talk a little bit more about those things. All right, fingerprints. Before I keep moving forward, anyone has any questions? I see the chat, there's no question, but if you do have any question, if you want to raise your hand or mute yourself, you can go ahead and do that. I'll give you 30 seconds to think about while I have a sip of water. All right, we're gonna keep moving. All right, a violation of fingerprinting. Be sure that you understand who's required to fingerprint and have it done. So a couple of examples. Let's say your child is 17 and he's about to go to college. Before he goes to college, he's not 18 yet. So should I get him fingerprinted? The recommendation is yes, because eventually that child is going to come back home. And when they come back home, and if you don't have those fingerprints, it's going to take a couple of weeks to get clearance. So make sure that you get it done before they leave. Another thing that it always brings a lot of questions, especially for now for the holidays when you may have family members visiting over for extended period of time. Make sure that you understand how long they can stay at the house without them being fingerprinted. So make sure that you understand that. And also, a lot of childcare providers, they hire assistants that have previously worked in another childcare facility, and they automatically assume that because of the fact they're already fingerprinted, they can just start working right off the bat in your daycare. That could definitely happen, but you got to file a criminal background check transfer, which is the form is listed on the presentation with the LIC 9182. And that's the form that you need to file with licensing. You can go on their website and you can get it done before that person starts working. But do not assume that the report transferred over to your facility, because they do not. Do not permit any adults, including volunteer parents and family members, to have access to your facility during daycare hours without checking with licensing. A lot of new parents, especially the first kid, they ask you if they can stay an extra hour, an extra 2 hours watching how you're going to be working with their child. If you do feel comfortable with that, definitely go for it. If not, make sure that you check with licensing and tell them that these people are going to be staying with you for a couple of hours, and if they're going to have to be fingerprinted. And remember, fingerprinting costs a little bit of money, So if that's the case and the parent wants to stay with you, you can let them know, hey, if you pay the fingerprints, more than welcome to stay here, but you're not going to be able to stay here if you don't have fingerprints. You must maintain a file with the fingerprint records of everyone who's required to be fingerprint. I'm sure if you are not a new child care provider or someone who's hoping to get licensed, that's one of the stuff the licensing always checks. They always make sure that everyone over 18 is being fingerprinted at the facility. Disagreement with parents. Now we're done with fingerprinting. No questions about that. If there's no question, we keep moving forward. Disagreement with parents. So disagreement with parents, you can start as a very simple disagreement with somebody, which in the event may bring you to more problems. So if you have a dispute with a parent, discuss the situation and make notes of the conversation. Always, always, always document whatever happens with the daycare. In here it says have the parent initial them, but if you have an argument with a parent, I'm sure they're not going to want to put an initial on something that they're fighting with you about. So that's absolutely fine. You can just go ahead and document the stuff that happened and file it under the kid's file. If the problem continues, give a second warning. If it still continues, can terminate according to the terms of your contract. So remember, we talked about the contract at the very beginning and have you got to have something in there that it says that contract can be terminated immediately. So make sure that you include it in there. It could work it could work for you in the event that you need to use it. Another thing is that you may feel sorry for the parents' problems. They have a special feeling for the child. You are always going to have a special feelings for a child, but you could be putting your license in jeopardy. So make sure that you understand all of the things that could bring along if you are helping some of the parents. And also, it's often that all of these parents that you help the most, when the help stops, that's when the complaint comes. So make sure that try to be as much as the same way with all the parents, so you don't have to run into these kind of problems. Report cards. And this is something that as an insurance company, we recommend. It's something that absolutely take it into consideration. And it could help one, to improve your services. Two, to provide a written record or parents input regarding your professions. There could be something maybe that is going on that you don't know about, and maybe somebody will write it down in there and you're going to find out. Knowing about the report cards often stop complaints, because you have them there. Can also prove that if a case against you on a lawsuit is filed, somebody's filing that you are being negligent with the children, and you have a report in there that it said you're great with children. So, that could really help. We recommend to have the parents complete this every 3 or 4 months. You can do it anytime, or you don't have to do it if you don't want. This is just a recommendation. Explain to them that you value their input. So, this is something that is just going to help improve the business in the event that you need to do something. They're also very valuable if a parent files a complaint with licensing. Just at the very beginning, like I said, that it stops complaints. It could also help with a complaint from licensing. These are just some of the questions that we can throw in there that you can use, even though, like I said before, when we used to have these live conference or live workshops, child care provider, we come up with a bunch of other questions that they use, but this is just questions that we recommend, and you can change them, you can add them, whatever you decide to do. So one of the questions reads, are you satisfied with the care your child is receiving? Do you feel your child is happy and feels safe? Do you feel your child is in a healthy environment? And do you have any suggestions that may enhance the child's experience? So, you can just tell them that you take this very serious, and they can definitely help you. Before we move to the next screen, I don't know, any questions? Because we go into a different team now. No questions. All right, keep moving along. Injuries. Injuries would always happen. No matter what, they will happen. Don't trust me. Accidents happen at the daycare very often. If a child is injured while in your care, get proper care immediately and notify the child's parents. It requires you to call 911. Don't be ashamed to call 911 and then have that kid come to a hospital or a medical assistance. Always document the details, including what and how the injury happened. Get statements from any witnesses. When we say many witnesses, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go to your neighbors and say, hey, neighbor, can you be my witness for an accident that happened at my daycare? No. Anyone living in your house, your husband, your mom, your dad, anyone can be that witness. They're just going to say that this is what happened, and document the stuff that happened. Keep the report on file, discuss it with the parents, and report it to licensing according to your state regulations. Remember, not reporting an injury to licensing is a very serious matter. So make sure that you do that, because on these kind of injury unusual reports, if you don't report it, you're going to be in big trouble. So if they come in, they check your files, and there's an injury that happened, and they don't have it on the database, you could be in trouble. They could give you a fine. They could give you start a process of revoking your license, because anything that has to do with an accident is very serious. Now we're going to start talking about a little more serious things. So claims and lawsuits. Believe it or not, this happens very often. And like I say, I've been doing this kind of insurance for a very long time, and a lot of times when I get a lot of clients calling me and they say, "Oh no, I don't need any insurance. I had the perfect parents." Well, those perfect parents can easily become the imperfect parents and become a headache if an accident happens, if something happens to that kid in your daycare. So make sure that you understand that an affidavit is the form the licensing gives you when you get licensed, and that is what I want to say 99% of child care providers always use. And even if you have insurance, we recommend for you to keep using that affidavit. So, insurance could go two ways. One, excellent, you have insurance. My kid is in a safe place. Another one, oh, they have insurance. Maybe we can do something about this. So, keep using the affidavit, even if you already carry a general liability insurance. There's a few different insurance options that you have. There's the general liability exclusive for your business, homeowners or renters policies. You can definitely add something to that. Some insurance companies offer it, but it's extremely limited and usually does not include what is the most important in an insurance for daycare, which is child abuse. So if you do have insurance through homeowners or renters policy, you can make sure that you review those things. You can ask your agent if you have those coverage. I can pretty much say that they're not going to be there, but it's better to get it from whomever you get insurance from. If you are sued, you're going to have to hire an attorney and possibly pay a judgment. A judgment is something that is when the lawsuit is done, the judge is going to say you are guilty or not guilty, and you got to reimburse this client X amount of money. So that's the amount of money that will come out of your pocket if you don't have insurance. What you need to know about insurance when you buy. And this is something that these are questions that you may consider when you're shopping around for insurance. So questions to consider: is the coverage the same for provider, employees, volunteers, and any residents of the household? So what does that mean? What if you get an allegation that say if you have a child that is 14, 12, 15, that hit a kid, would you be covered for that? What is it? There's an allegation that one of your assistants didn't feed a child. What if there's an allegation that someone from your family did something to a child? Are you still going to be protected? So those are the questions one of the questions that you need to ask. Are all claims, expenses, and legal fees in addition to the policy limits? What does that mean? What means is that if an attorney is necessarily to defend you, if your insurance company is going to reduce those fees from the limits that you already have. So let me just give you an example. Let's say that you have a coverage for $100,000 and there's a case against you, and the attorney's fees are going to be $50,000. So if that $50,000 attorney fee, if it's going to be taken away from the limits that you already have, or is it something that you're going to be the attorneys is just going to charge the insurance company, you're still going to have that $100,000 to pay for that claim? So make sure that you ask that. Is there a separate limit for abuse coverage? If so, what is the limit? 90% of the time, there is a separate limit for abuse coverage, and it's normally a standard coverage for all childcare providers. So, but make sure that you ask that, especially if you have something for your homeowners or renters insurance, which is, if it's not very limited, they don't offer it at all. Is animals dispensing medication, fruit preparation, filters, infant labels, lender, operating after normal hours, playground equipment on and off premises covered. So all of those things, a lot of those items that we mentioned there, those a lot of them are already excluded from the policy, which means that um, insurance company is still going to insure you. But if anything that happens within those things that are and even more stuff that are listed here, they're not going to cover you if they're in the exclusion form. Provider needing special insurance. Absolutely. So liability insurance will provide attorneys and pay legal expenses to defend you and pay any settlements that may arise from the policy limits for covered claims. Your policy, like I said at the very beginning, is a package of coverage that you receive, just like a regular business. So your policy should include professional liability with coverage for negligent supervision and child abuse. That is three different things that should be included in the policy. At the same time, liability issues. So to understand a little bit better liability, hopefully not. If some of us have had an accident in a car accident, we know that it takes a very long time to get the car fixed. It takes a very long time if there's a lawsuit to settle. But yet, what about if there's medical bills? Those medical bills, they must be paid immediately. So with the child care insurance, make sure that something that is called medical treatment is included, which normally we call it accident medical. And that accident medical coverage will immediately pay for any medical bills that may incur. At the same time, that same medical insurance may prevent a lot of lawsuits against you, because if there's a bill for $15,000-$20,000 that the insurance company is to pay, trust me, they'll pay that $15,000-$20,000 instead of having a lawsuit against them. This is a word that is very recommended, and I will go a little bit further about that. It is recommended that your policy is per occurrence, not on claims made. And I'm going to give you an example why it's so important for your policy to be per occurrence. Let's say, for example, that in 2023, you opened your daycare and you had insurance. Come 2024, you didn't like that daycare business and you say, nope, I'm closing down. I'm going to go back to work to what I was doing in the past. 3, 4, 5 years later, a family comes forward and says that the child say that, well, that kid was in care, that you did not feed him, that you hit him, that you pulled the hair, that you did this, whatever the case may be. As long as your policy is written on an occurrence basis and you had insurance when the allegations happen, that insurance company will always defend you. No matter if you're already out of business, no matter if you already just did daycare for that 1 year, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter those things. What it matters is the time limit. Anyone who's being at your daycare has the right to file a complaint against you. They call it 18 plus 2, but to make sure that we all understand what it means, that kid or that person has until they turn 20 to bring any allegations against you. So that's why it's so important that your policy is on occurrence basis and not on claims made. Claims made policy, for example, is a car insurance, which means that if you are driving around with no insurance and you have an accident, no matter if the complaint comes later, you're not going to have coverage. If you have an accident and you don't have insurance, no coverage for you. So make sure that it's for occurrence only. What you need to know about insurance to buy. So these are a little bit of more questions. What is the limit per child for an accident medical insurance? Is there a deductible? A deductible is the amount of money that will come out of your own pocket before the insurance company pays any claims. Does the accident medical insurance covers for children injured on a field trip or in an automobile? Well, let me just go a little further on this about automobile. In the past, a lot of insurance, daycare insurance will pay for if you had an accident inside of your vehicle. Nowadays, they do not pay for any claim when it comes down to that, unless if you have auto insurance, which is called business auto insurance, which now there is something that you can buy to protect yourself in the event that you do provide transportation for the children. A lot of providers ask us, what if I have what they call full coverage? Would my kids be covered? No, they will not be covered. Even if you have $1 million coverage, they're not going to cover you for a claim because they're automatically going to think that you are making money out of transporting the children. And that will put you in a place where you need to have commercial auto insurance. So if your policy is not commercial auto insurance, that's something that you need to consider if you're providing transportation. Where do you buy insurance? Well, believe it or not, there's not a lot of insurance companies that offer this kind of service, and they do not offer it because they think that there's not a lot of money in this, because in California itself, there's about 35,000 childcare providers, licensed childcare providers, I may add. Out of that 35 licensed childcare providers, maybe only about 10,000 by insurance. So there's not a lot of premium to collect in the event that there's a lawsuit against one of the childcare providers. There goes all the profit for the insurance companies. So that's why a lot of big companies, that we know about, they don't offer this kind of service, and it's very limited to the insurance companies they do. So, make sure that you get the proper coverage. Um, there's also one more coverage that I like to talk about, and this is the only coverage that is a law that you should have, which is workers' compensation. In workers' compensation, you must have insurance if you have one employee, even if it's part-time. So make sure that you understand that, and don't be afraid about the premiums for those insurance for those coverage, because it could be very affordable. So with that being said, I don't know if anyone has any questions. If not, my personal information is included in here, which is my phone number. If you want to ask any questions about a particular coverage, how much a policy is, what are the coverage, I'll be more than happy to explain it to you on a one-on-one basis. Maribel, I don't know if there's any questions, or if anybody has any questions.
We could give it a minute in case anybody has questions. Thank you so much for the presentation. Really helpful.
Nice.
And let's see, let me just stop recording.